We start off with a classic, what so proudly we hail. I was gonna do more like, proudly we hail. What about like the peak of the song? Spangled banner, yeah, yeah, wave. Okay, and were you planning on doing a big riff on the end? Okay, I mean, we're out of time, so get out there.
Heyo, and welcome to No Dunks, a basketball podcast on the Athletic Podcast Network. I'm your host for today, Trey Kirby, joined here by Tass Mellis in the Classic Factory. We got JD behind the boards making the magic happen. No Skeets today, but we do have a special guest. She's a women's basketball staff writer and co-host of the Athletic Women's Basketball Show, Sabrina Merchant. Sabrina, thanks for coming back on No Dunks and talking to us about the W for a little bit here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
We'll get into the nitty-gritty here in a little bit, but I mean, we're halfway through the season. Good one so far? It feels like it to me.
Pretty good. I think everyone's paying attention, which is fun.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's paying attention. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. But there was a big time game in the W last night between the first place New York Liberty, second place Connecticut Sun, tied going into the fourth quarter. But the Liberty were just a little bit too much. Really great defense, I thought, from New York. Even without reigning MVP Breanna Stewart, another starter, Betnijah Laney Hamilton, missing as well. 30 points, though, from Sabrina Ionescu. Do you have any takeaways from the Liberty beating the Sun for the third time this season?
I thought it was really strange that Alyssa Thomas was on a minutes restriction. I understand the Olympics are coming up, but this is a team that you have faced in the playoffs before that you haven't managed to beat since facing in the playoffs. And to just give up a chance to potentially beat them when Breanna Stewart was out, when Betnijah Laney Hamilton was out, just super, super strange that Alyssa Thomas wasn't in the game for the last 13 minutes of the game. And kind of just took the air out of that one by the end of it.
Yeah, it's an odd time of year because we got the All-Star break coming up, but like you're saying, it's also the Olympic break for all of the W players. So Stewart's out resting to be ready for the Olympics. Exact same for Alyssa Thomas. This isn't the kind of thing you encounter most years in the W, having to actually rest up and load manage for a complete other tournament on the other side of the world. But that's how it went down last night. And to me, it just kind of looked like the way things go for the Liberty and the Sun played out the exact same way. The Liberty, they make a ton of three-pointers. The Sun, they're not a great three-point shooting team. And when it comes down to it, you got to be able to shoot in 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, and back to the threes. Sabrina was hot, 6 of 11 from 3, although she hinted this past weekend that she wasn't going to be in the WNBA three-point contest, which happens on Friday. We still don't have the names, Sabrina, but I want to ask you a two-part question. Number one, do you think Sabrina will take part on Friday in the three-point contest? And two, you mentioned on the WNBA show how watching her last year in the three-point contest, and that performance was one of the wildest things you've seen in person. So please give us a little taste, a little memory of what happened there.
Yeah, so I think first of all, she has to be in this year's three-point shootout. She set a record last year at 37 points in that shootout out of a possible 40. And then she obviously goes on to the NBA All-Star Weekend where she has the shootout against Steph, which is this massive event on NBA All-Star Saturday night. And for her not to defend her title would just be a travesty, frankly, especially when one rookie, Caitlin Clark, is right there potentially waiting to take it from her. So I think it would just be a huge miss for Sabrina not to be in it. And it's just like a minute of shooting. She doesn't need to practice all that much. Like clearly things have been working for Sabrina in 2024. But yeah, going back to 2023, it was so funny because, the Michelob Ultra Arena where the All-Star game was in Las Vegas last year, they were like practicing their graphics ahead of time just to make sure everything was ready to go for the skills challenge and the shootout. And they had Sabrina's name plastered as the winner ahead of time. Just like, in case this happens, we want to be ready to go. And then not only does Sabrina,
what did she do?
Beginning because
there she is. Sorry, you just stalled for a second, so I had to ask.
Oh, sorry.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
No, keep on going.
You kind of forgot how many she had made in a row because I think she missed her second shot. And so it wasn't like, oh, she hasn't missed yet. But then you get to the third rack and it's like, wait, she made all of those and she made the the starry ball. Is that what it's called? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
The very bright colored green ball, that's a little bit deeper. That's very much in Sabrina's range. But anytime you can get 3-point legend Allie Quigley to say, like, you are the new 3-point queen, I will not come back to try to challenge you. Like, you've done something very, very cool.
She has to. She has to. This weekend, she said, I'm not shooting well. Maybe it's just not going to be for me this year. But then she goes 6 of 11 from 3. That's why I included that stat, because now she can't say no. She has to.
Yeah, exactly. She's on a hot streak right now, but 37 for 40, man. That was incredible last year. It was so special that they're like, we got to get you in the NBA 3-point contest. Right. And then it was the best part of NBA All-Star Weekend. So hopefully she says yes. Hopefully she defends her title. And hopefully Caitlin Clark goes in it as well, because I think everybody would be tuned in to see that. I don't know if you saw this from the game last night in New York, Sabrina. It's the New York Liberty. It's an in-game little bit of entertainment they do on the Jumbotron, and they're talking about how they like to put their toilet paper on the hole. Let's take a look.
Oh my goodness, this driving me crazy. It's definitely me. If anyone puts the toilet paper on A, you're crazy. Oh my gosh. Over. Come on. If you do under, you need to check in with yourself, see what's going on. It's not right. Probably A. Yeah. We and my fiance actually had a discussion on this. I hang it like A, but she thinks it should be B. So A is for A. Oh, I am B for sure. Yeah. And I have no reason for it. And there's B. Oh, B for sure. Anybody that does A, it's like A. Because when you take it out, wait. Yeah, A. So you just roll it down, because why do you want your hands on the toilet paper and then you wipe it? So you just pull out what you need. Who said B? That's pitiful.
Wow. Yeah. I can't believe there's so many A's.
Exactly. I couldn't believe the split was so even, actually. Yeah. So 2 questions for you, Sabrina. Number 1, obviously, A or B. And number 2, is this the kind of division that could tear apart the New York Liberty? The infighting about how people are rolling their toilet paper?
I think I find myself in the Courtney Vandersloot range of its B, but I'm not entirely sure why. It just sort of happens. That's the way it goes. But no, oh my God, team chemistry on the New York Liberty is just fantastic. I'm surprised I didn't have Ellie chime in and with her preferred choice of toilet paper arrangement. Like, that seems like a real missed opportunity to me.
Okay, so that's a great question, because there are some serious stars on the New York Liberty, and Breanna Stewart, a 2-time MVP, Sabrina Ionescu, one of the biggest names in the WNBA, great player. Jonquel Jones has an MVP as well. She's been playing great. But is Ellie the biggest star on the team? This is like one of the top mascots in sports right now.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible, right? I mean, she comes out with the head sprung music in the 4th quarter, like does the Ellie stomp. Everybody's talking about her, even people I know who are NBA fans who are like only really familiar with the Knicks and the Nets in New York. They know about Ellie. And if I were Stewie or Sab, I would be a little wary of how much attention Ellie's getting, although apparently Ellie's doing some clutch babysitting for Breanna Stewart while her kid is running onto the court during post-game interviews. So I guess that's enough to endear herself to the basketball superstars on the New York Liberty. Yeah,
that's the real big 3 right there. Stewie, Sab, and Ellie the Elephant. Unbeatable combo, and it's working well for the Liberty right now. They're 21-4, first place in the WNBA. Like I said, Connecticut Sun are right behind them in the standings. Then it goes Seattle Storm, Las Vegas Aces, and Minnesota Lynx. These are the top 5 teams in the league right now. Realistically, who has a chance at the title this year?
I think there's an inner 3. Mm-hmm. I would say New York, Las Vegas, and Minnesota. And I say Minnesota because they're the only team to have actually beaten Vegas and New York this season. And when Nafisa Collier has played, they've been absolutely outstanding. Like, we saw them in the Commissioner's Cup, convincingly take down New York. They did it earlier in the season against the Liberty as well. Just the way Collier has been playing, like, very much MVP level. It's a real shame that she is yet another Olympian who has missed some games coming into this break. But yeah, I think it's those 3. Obviously, Liberty and Aces coming off of that epic finals meeting a year ago, and the other 6 times they met during the regular season and Commissioner's Cup were all just great games, and they were clearly a class of themselves ahead of the rest of the league. And I think Minnesota has entered that circle just with the way they've played defense this year, and Collier just taking another step where I think she's firmly on that Stewie level this year, actually.
Well, you mentioned the finals from last year. The 2 powerhouses got there, the Liberty and the Aces. And Trey went through some of the standings, the records, because it's a little different this year, how yes, the Liberty are managing to run the East, but the Sun aren't too far back. And then in the West, the Aces are right up there, right, very, very close with the Storm and the Lynx. My question is, we saw both powerhouses get there in the end last year. Not really an issue. Both got there, no problem. This year, it feels a little different. You mentioned those Lynx and how good they are defensively, defending the three-point ball, one of the best ever. And then I heard you talk about Caitlin Clark being in Minnesota, and it was almost a road game for the Fever. And I just mentioned that because I just am curious. All the eyeballs are on the WNBA this year. There's so many out there. I just wonder, is it better for the league to go back to feel like what it was last year with the powerhouses getting there, or is it the parity being better, where the Minnesota Lynx are damn good and they should have more fans out there with all the eyeballs out there? Is it better for the league to go a little parity, or is it more the powerhouses that get the eyeballs?
Yeah, I go back and forth with this a lot because I think super teams make it really easy to, zone in on a couple places, and then that's a very natural entry point for everybody. So I think casual fans find it a lot easier to just find out Goliath, and that's the team I'm going to check in and root for the team that's playing against them, or whatever that happens to be. But this rookie class has kind of upended everything. It's not so much that parity has inserted itself into the W. It's more there's all these players we know really, really well, and we just want to check in on their teams. I think if Cameron Brink had been healthy, then people would be talking more about the Los Angeles Sparks, and obviously Caitlin in Indiana and Angel in Chicago are drawing a lot of interest. And I don't know that they're lending parity to the league so much, because I still think those teams are very much 6, 7, 8, not really going to contend to win a playoff series. So I think super teams are still very good in terms of people like watching greatness, and they like watching, David take down great teams. But I kind of like the concentration of talent, especially in a league that's this small with 12 teams. You can get some just absurd collections of talent, like we're seeing in New York, like we're seeing in Las Vegas, and I think that's really fun to check in on.
Yeah, definitely. New York has been dominant all year. They had a chance last season. The Aces, slow start for them, though. 6-6. I think that was as many games. 6 losses was as many as they lost the entirety of last regular season. They're 10-2 since, 8-2, I suppose, with Chelsea Gray returning to the lineup. What did you make of the Aces' slow start? Was it just kind of a complacency mixed with injury? We'll turn it on when it really matters sort of deal?
Yeah, it's interesting because they didn't have any complacency coming off of the 22 title.
Yeah.
And, there's this thing with great teams that they constantly find ways that people are theoretically disrespecting them and using that as chips on their shoulders to motivate them going forward. And I think there was a lot of that. Oh, nobody respected us in 2022. We're going to show you what we're actually made of in 2023 for the Las Vegas Aces. But they can't really use that to rely on in 2024. It's okay, well, you not only won the title, you set a regular season wins record and won game 4 without 2 of your starters. So clearly there's a lot of respect for what Las Vegas is doing. And the only person on that team that seems to have a giant chip on her shoulder is A'ja Wilson, because of the way the MVP vote transpired in 2023, where she finished 3rd and obviously got the one anomalous 4th place vote that presumably that voter will take that vote to their grave before explaining what happened in that situation. So I think it's really just kind of we did this, we're not going to really gear up again until October, when it really counts. And I think honestly, the Olympics play a big part of this. Chelsea and Jackie and Kelsey Plum, they're all gearing up for Paris, and it takes a lot of effort, to go win a gold medal, and they want to be big participants in Team USA. And it's kind of hard to balance, going all out in a WNBA season while still trying to make sure that you're ready to go at this time of year for the Olympics. And obviously Chelsea Gray had the injury that she was coming back from. And frankly, I don't know that she would even come back when she did, were it not for the Aces' poor record and the fact that they kind of just needed to bank some wins.
Sure.
So I wouldn't be too concerned with the Aces. I think you get them into the postseason, they'll be just fine. But it is a little disappointing that we saw such this sustained run from greatness from them last year. And now it's all right, well, we know we can do it. We're going to become one of those flip the switch teams, which are just significantly less interesting to me.
Yeah, it's never fun to wait and see when you know how great a team can be. But like you mentioned, one person who hasn't had any complacency so far, A'ja Wilson, averaging 27 points a game, 12 rebounds, alongside 2 steals and 3 blocks. Last year we had an incredible MVP race in the W. Like you said, basically 3 players were coming down to it, in Breanna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas, and then A'ja Wilson, of course. From what I can tell, at this point, halfway through the season, A'ja Wilson is your choice as MVP. She seems to be the front runner.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that it's A'ja Wilson. Just like you mentioned, the numbers that she's putting up. And, I kind of think like it gets lost when you have a 40-minute game that she's averaging 27 points and 12 rebounds per game. But that's also, if you extrapolate it to a 40-minute game, that's like 33 and 16 rebounds or something of that nature. So just the ridiculous numbers that she's putting up are absolutely insane. And the level of dominance that she's playing with, like defensively, offensively, there's so many things that she's doing onto the court, like the blocks, the way she's protecting the paint without Candace Parker this year. I mean, I've just really never seen a season like this. I mean, you can look into the advanced stats and all of that, but it's just unbelievable what's happening with A'ja Wilson this year.
Is there anybody else you think who could maybe knock her out of the top spot or at least give us a close race down the stretch here this season?
I think the problem with New York is that there's too many good players. Like, I don't really know who their MVP even is. Like, Stewie is the defending MVP, but Jonquel Jones was really, really good to start the season, and Sabreena has come on incredibly well in like the last 15 games or so. So it'd be really hard for me to like pin one of the Liberty as the potential MVP. And I think that like cannibalizing of votes is going to work against them. But, Nafisa Collier, I mentioned her earlier, had a really great stretch. And if she comes out of the Olympics similar to the way she was playing back in May and June, I think is at least a first team all WNBA candidate, if not an MVP candidate. Alyssa Thomas, like the numbers are down a little bit this year. And I think part of the magic of her case last year was that Connecticut loses a starter and they're still just as good during the regular season, and having a fully healthy lineup kind of dims like the story with Alyssa Thomas. So I think like it would really just have to be Collier going on a super sick run for Minnesota coming out of the break to give A'ja any competition. But like, I mean, we're kind of heading towards like unanimous territory for A'ja Wilson, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, that's the coolest thing that can happen in an MVP race outside of like a legendarily close MVP race, is somebody being the unanimous choice. But the Sun are interesting to me because when we talked about teams who could realistically win the title, you left them out. Even though they are second in the league right now, played the Liberty pretty well last night. Connecticut has made the finals or the semifinals in each of the last 5 seasons. They've been one of the final 4 for 5 straight years. They've got an MVP candidate in Alyssa Thomas. But I'm kind of with you. It just feels like it's never going to happen for the Sun. How are they ever going to get over the hump?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned like Minnesota being the team that has beaten Vegas and New York this year. Like, not only has Connecticut not beaten Vegas, they have also not beaten New York. So you kind of have to break through that duopoly at some point for me to take this team seriously as a title contender. And, you mentioned the threes. Like, they just don't get a lot of volume from their three-point shooters. It's kind of what happens when you're starting Dejanay Carrington, who's like more of a defensive player at point guard, and Ty Harris's shooting percentage has gone down significantly from last year when she was admittedly the number 1 3-point percentage in the WNBA. But there's just not enough spacing. I think like you can kind of congest in on Alyssa Thomas and Bree Jones, and unless DeWanna Bonner's having like a spectacular night, it's really hard for me to see Connecticut having the type of offense to really keep up with a Las Vegas or a New York. It's a bummer because like there's such an interesting style of play, and like Alyssa Thomas is unlike almost anyone you will watch on the basketball court. Mainly because she has no working shoulders, but it's just like a unique specimen. And I would really love for something like that to manifest itself in, ultimate glory. But I don't know. I don't see enough perimeter help in Connecticut, and it's just a bummer because like that's the Aces and the Liberty are just bursting with guards who can just dice you up, and Connecticut hasn't proven to have an answer for that yet.
Yeah, that seems to be the problem, is that the Aces and the Liberty are great defensively, just like Connecticut is, but then the Aces and Liberty are also great offensively, whereas Connecticut is a meager third on offense behind all of their offensive rebounding and physicality. But I don't know, we made it 20 minutes without doing a big-time Caitlin Clark discussion, but what's it been like covering the W this year with Caitlin Clark in the league? One of the biggest indicators to me was the All-Star voting. A'ja Wilson went from 95,000 All-Star votes leading the league last year to over 600,000 All-Star votes this year. And I was like, what, 6 times as many people are watching the W right now? It kind of feels like that.
Yeah, it absolutely feels like that. I mean, this is like very inside baseball, but like when I go to cover practices for teams that are visiting Los Angeles, it's usually like just me going to hang out. Like there's not a lot of interest in road teams from the usual Sparks crew. And when like the Fever were in town, there were like 13 people just there ready to go.
Wow.
I was like, oh yeah, like this is the thing that happens now. Like people are interested in watching Caitlin Clark, even if that's at practice. And you've seen the attendance numbers just rocket up across the country. I mean, they fit more people in Crypto.com Arena to see the Indiana Fever play the Sparks than they do during a normal Lakers game, which is just astounding. And it's not just Caitlin, it's like Angel and Kate Martin gets louder cheers on the road for 3-pointers than just about anybody I've ever heard. The Iowa effect is very real. It's been really, really fun just seeing more people come in, more people have like a vested interest in wanting to see Indiana do well or wanting to see Chicago do well and making their way to games and having things to talk about. Like I've had so many of my NBA friends who just randomly text me with questions about like, well, why isn't Indiana running this at the end of the game? I'm like, there's not even a game on right now. Like, are we watching a replay? Like, what's happening? But it's been great, just more people involved, more people interested, and it's been really, really fun.
Yeah, it was great because I saw those votes as well. They increased by 6 times. And I wondered, is this a social media thing? Are we just increasing everything by 4x now? Because that happened in the NBA All-Star voting as well. But then you see the attendance numbers, and those are real. Here, being in Atlanta, the Dream went from the Gateway Center Arena to State Farm Arena for both Indiana Fever games because people were coming out to watch them. So that is obviously what is happening. And just the conversations around, I mentioned social media, how much it is happening. It did suck to see Cameron Brink get hurt, but there's still, because there are so many fans that people are just behind these stars now.
Yeah, a lot of stars came into the WNBA this year. Sabrina, has the rookie class been like as good as you expected? Because everybody was talking this class up. Obviously, Caitlin Clark at the top. Cameron Brink came in as a great defensive prospect as well, was playing great until she got hurt. Angel Reese Angel Reese was a big-time player. Camila Cardozo, big-time player as well. A lot of known rookies were coming into the league, gonna be stars. Have they been as impressive as you thought they would?
Yeah, it's kind of wild that they've lived up to expectation. I mean, Caitlin, obviously the tough start to the season with the schedule that the Indiana Fever were handed, like did them no favors, but you put a little practice time in, she gets to like learn Aaliyah Boston's middle name. Like good things have happened in Indiana since that torrid like 11-game stretch to start the season. And I think people are seeing just what kind of playmaker she is and how exciting that can be at the professional level. Angel Reese has been honestly much better than I expected. I didn't really think that her rebounding would translate to the WNBA because she is a little bit smaller than most of the forwards she's going up against, but like that motor is unbelievable. I've rarely seen a player play as hard as Angel Reese does on a possession-to-possession basis, and she's been really good for a Chicago Sky team that I expected to be out of the playoffs and is probably going to end up at least in like a 7 seed this season. So just really impressive from her. Aaliyah Edwards in Washington, I think, has been really good. Obviously, injuries have kind of kept her in and out of the lineup, and pretty much everybody who's going to the Olympics has been in like some measure of bubble wrap for the last 2 weeks. So haven't seen a ton out of Edwards recently, but she was great during that month of June. Rickea Jackson in LA, just like a bucket all the time. The Sparks were running their offense through Rickea Jackson down the stretch against the Las Vegas Aces, like not once, but twice this regular season, which is just an astounding thing to think about. So yeah, you're just seeing so many rookies who have the potential to be real franchise defining players down the line, like true all-stars. And we've seen classes like this before. I think 2019 really stands out. That was the year that Nafisa Collier, Arike Gumbawale, Jackie Young came out. And they've obviously all been really great for their respective teams. But for these players to have the star power coming into the WNBA, to have all of the expectation and to live up to it, I think is just like remarkable and exactly what the league needed to kind of take the next step forward and build, finally, carry that college momentum into the pro season.
Yeah, it's hard not to be an Angel Reese fan after watching her against Caitlin Clark the last time they played. She did the post-game interview and said, I've got some dog in me. And it's obvious, like you just said, she may be a little undersized against forwards, but she's out there working extremely hard against Caitlin Clark's team. But they play far different positions, and everybody talking about these two teams being a rivalry. Do you see that happening in the future for the Sky and the Fever?
I think the geography really helps, anytime two teams are that close to each other.
Yeah.
It's easier to create a rivalry. Like, conferences don't really mean anything in the WNBA other than Commissioner's Cup groups, and like that's a 5-game stretch during a 40-game regular season, so I can't imagine that's going to be like the main impetus for the rivalry. But like, just the level of intensity in the 3 games thus far, we've seen like just incredible crowds, a little extra intensity during the course of the game. Obviously the flagrant fouls, which I don't really want to get into, but like just a little, extra oomph in the matchup between the two of them. Like, they clearly don't want to talk about each other like at a really extended level, which is always a good sign that there's some animosity there. That great comeback that Chicago had against Indiana in the last game. I think, Angel and Caitlin have just been placed on stages where they've had to compete in really big stages before. And, for it to be a rivalry, I think they'd like have to meet in the playoffs at some point, or at the very least, like, I don't know, they'd have to be in the playoffs, because there's the only way that you're going to really build some stakes between the two of them. But I do think that just them coming in, like having such vastly different fan bases out of college, the way they play is so different. It's very easy to latch on to one or the other. And the fact that both of the teams have like really good young talent that you can still grow along with, like the fact that Kennedy Carter is there and Aaliyah Boston is there and Camila Cardoso. I mean, there's just so much that could keep getting better with both of these teams. And I think as Indiana reaches its potential and Chicago becomes even better than we thought they could be, I really hope that this is a great rivalry, because, Indiana hasn't been in the playoffs since 2016. Chicago obviously won the title in 2021, but like ownership group is a little weird, and like we don't know if free agents want to go there. So for them to have like this built-in core of Cardoso, Reese, and Carter is just, it's great. And I do think that we're going to get like some real enmity between the two. And I'm just so pumped for their 4th regular season game, because like that thing is just going to be a massive viewership number.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And both teams are like playing a lot better. I'm with you. I'm surprised that the Sky are this good. I thought after James Wade left the team to go coach the Toronto Raptors that it was going to be a long time before Chicago was even sniffing the playoffs. But the Fever, they started out 0-5, bottomed out at 1-8. They're 10-6 since, playing Caitlin Clark style basketball a little faster, I think. And then the Sky are like an Angel Reese team. They play really hard. They're really physical. They rebound. They play defense. Maybe they'll be a Connecticut Sun in a few years, but who cares? We'll worry about that later. It feels like both of these teams are made immediately in their franchise players' images. So who's the rookie of the year, I think, is going to be the question a lot of people are asking during the second half of the season, because they both have really solid cases and are huge reasons why their teams are having these surprisingly good seasons.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the decision to have to make down the line. It's already been quite the decision to have to make thus far. I mean, Ben Pickman, our fellow WNBA writer at The Athletic, and I have had this discussion so many times already. If you want to listen to the podcast or read our debate, like it's all there for you at theathletic.com. But I mean, I've kind of leaned Caitlin thus far, just because I think the degree of difficulty for being a point guard as a rookie in the WNBA is really challenging. And for every defense to be keyed in on her as the number 1 item on the scouting report, when like Aaliyah Boston exists and Alyssa Smith exists, just shows how important she is to what Indiana is doing. And, the last 10 games or so, she's been, maybe the second best point guard in the WNBA, which is like a crazy thing to think as a rookie in this league when it's so veteran heavy. But I mean, I wouldn't begrudge anyone voting for Angel. Like the Sky are just, like you said, so much better than we expected heading into the season, and Angel's on-off numbers like really paint that picture. She has been a genuine source of like positive impact for Chicago all season. It's just so hard to compare because stylistically they're so different, right? Like what Angel is doing versus what Caitlin's doing, the amount of responsibility that Caitlin has to direct the offense versus what Angel's doing defensively. They're just completely different cases. And honestly, like at this point, I wouldn't care who won. It's going to be a good story either way. But I think it's so cool that we actually have this discussion, because Rookie of the Year hasn't been contested like this since maybe 2017. And even then, like Alicia Gray versus Brittany Sykes was not like a, everybody's talking about this kind of race.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. It's exciting to have like two of the biggest names actually playing well and up against each other. It just feels like with the way their careers ended in college, the way they came into the WNBA, the fact that they're in Illinois and Indiana, it's just perfect for them to continually smash into each other. Sabreena, what'd you think about Angel Reese chasing the double-double streak? Set a WNBA record with 15 consecutive double-doubles though it did end just recently against the New York Liberty when they were quadruple teaming her in the post to keep her to 8 points.
It got a bit much for me, honestly.
Yeah.
I thought we were going in the stat padding direction. You know, like there was definitely some, 1.5 minutes left. Angel's still in single figures points or single figures rebounds. We need to address this. I think it really hit like a peak for me when they were playing Atlanta last week, and they're up by 7 points with like a possession to go. I think there's like 15 seconds left on the clock, and like this is traditionally a dribble out the clock situation. And Angel calls for the ball in the post because she only has 9 points, and that's when I lost it. I was like, no, I'm out on the streak. This is too much. We have jumped the shark here, and kudos to the New York Liberty for throwing the quadruple team at her and just ending this discussion, because it is very cool, obviously, that she had set a mark that was originally held by Candace Parker, probably one that no one's going to chase for a little while now. So we have the record. We don't need to, inflate it to any degree. And I'm glad that someone, gave her a little taste of her own medicine at the stat padding, because it's just not basketball. Come on, guys.
No.
Not at all. Sabreena, I have an odd question for you because you're so close to the WNBA. Is there a reason that players like A'ja Wilson and Angel Reese wear just one leg sleeve? Is it a medical issue? Is it something that they're doing just for style? I need to know. A second part, why do they call a leg cover, a leg sleeve, a sleeve? I mean, that's just a weird word, don't you think? Will they change that at some point?
Actually.
It is, right? A sleeve? Anyways, do they do it for a reason?
Would you call it like a pant? Like what are you hoping to call it?
Yeah, I was totally thinking that as soon as I wondered that, what would you call something that covers one leg? Yeah, a pant? I don't know. There isn't a really good one to rival sleeve. I would say a cover is what I say when I say it. But I don't know. Even what an NBA player wears on just one arm, I guess it's called a sleeve. But it's just like even that word. I don't know.
Well, I don't understand why you object to an arm sleeve when sleeves literally cover arms.
Yeah, it's a sleeve.
Yeah, that one's a sleeve.
Yeah,
it's a sleeve.
I think a leg sleeve pretty adequately describes what we're talking about. Like you can just pick somebody out of a crowd who doesn't even know A'ja Wilson and say that she wears a leg sleeve, and you'd be able to envision what it is you're referring to.
I guess so.
But yeah, I think A'ja is the first one to do it, and it is purely style related. A'ja's got a lot of style quirks, like the shorts come up really high, the shoulders get a little twisted in, and the people who have worn leg sleeves have followed A'ja. Like Deja Kelly is one of the prominent ones in college. She's going to be playing at Oregon next year. Angel Reese, obviously one of them. Taya Cooper, another SEC guard. So I think this is an A'ja just like look situation. And because A'ja is the greatness that is A'ja Wilson, other people have followed in her stead.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen in the NBA as well.
I saw LeBron in practice was wearing one single leg sleeve, like going through Lakers.
I mean, why isn't Bam
stuff.
Adebayo doing it yet?
Yeah, exactly. People need to get on this. Now that you mentioned it, I think we should call pant legs pant sleeves. Because you don't call your shirt sleeves, you don't call them shirt arms. It doesn't make sense. We gotta standardize things here. Saw a report today on The Athletic from Mike Vorkunov, Sabreena, that the WNBA media rights deal is wrapped up in the NBA's media rights deal. So the league is going to be receiving up to $2.2 billion over the next 11 years. Since their rights deal is done alongside the NBA's rights deal, they'll be partnering with ESPN, NBC, and Amazon. Still obviously waiting to see what Warner does in this whole thing. And I guess it's actually possible for the W to get some more partners as well, up to 6 they're eligible for. What kind of impact is all of this money coming into the WNBA going to have?
Yeah, so just to set the table real quick, I think the baselines for this deal were the NWSL just signed a deal that was 4 years, $240 million. So that's about $60 million annually. So the WNBA deal is, within 3 or 4 times that. And the MLS signed a deal a couple years ago that was $2.5 billion over 10 years. And heading into this season, MLS and the WNBA had very comparable levels of viewership. And, for the MLS to get that number and the WNBA to still be living in its like $50 million total didn't make sense. So for them to get closer to that number is a lot better, obviously, for their financials. I think the big thing here is the WNBA has the opportunity to opt out of its current collective bargaining agreement at the end of this season and then write a new one that would go into effect starting in 2026. And, one of the main factors in terms of WNBA players not getting as much money is the revenue in the league hasn't been as high. And so for revenue on the TV deal to jump 6 times, over the average life of this deal to what it currently is, obviously puts a lot more money into the players' pockets. It gives them an opportunity to potentially ask for a greater share of the basketball revenue. I think they get around 10% of the BRI at this point, which is, you think about the NBA, they get 50%. So it's a big difference. And I think this just gives the league the opportunity to improve player experience across the board. There's been a big talk about charter flights in the WNBA, and this is the first year that every team has had charters around the country. And part of the reason for that is that the league didn't have enough revenue to sustain it. And now you look at all of this money coming in from TV deals, and if the price of charter flights is $25 million a year, that can easily be sustained by the extra money that's coming in from, media rights. And just think about all the other levels of player experience, like housing and practice facilities and all these things that could be augmented by extra revenue coming in. It's really exciting for what is possible for the players, and just gives them more options, like when you're talking about what you can ask for in the next CBA, because the league can't say that they're cash poor anymore.
Yeah, it was pretty eye-opening for a lot of people, I think, when Caitlin Clark went from playing in college to joining the WNBA. You saw the graphics about what her salary was going to be as a first-year player, but all this money coming in, expansion teams joining as well. The business side of the W seems to be going pretty well. We got a couple of teams coming into the league soon. Do you think that this new media rights deal means that outside of the couple of teams we already know, that there will be more expansion coming to the WNBA, or is that still 5 years down the line?
I think Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has said that she wants 2 more teams in place by 2028.
Okay.
So we get up to 16 teams by 2028, and I think that's a good number just because there's only so much you can expand the league scheduling to keep it in that summer window, between college basketball seasons. So I think 16 is probably the right number. Yeah. Any more expansion and you turn into MLS territory, for lack of a better word. But I think that's probably a good place that they're going to stop, unless there's just this insane demand for teams, to want to get into the league, which, I'm still not sure is exactly the case.
Well, interesting to know. One of the teams near the bottom of the standings, I got to ask because they're close to my heart, close to my home here, the Atlanta Dream. Last year, they made the playoffs for the first time in 5 seasons. They added a future Hall of Famer in Tina Charles. They started 4-2. They beat the Aces. Since then, 3-14. They've lost 7 straight, heading into a matchup with a great Minnesota team tonight. What is going on with the Atlanta Dream this season?
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask that because I just truly hate the style of basketball that the Atlanta Dream play. It just does nothing for me. I'm sorry to be the one.
No,
to
it's okay.
say
it's
that.
Okay. It hasn't been a great season to watch.
A lot of it is Ryan Howard is out, and she is the primary source of spacing on this team and one-on-one shot creation. Alicia Grace had quite a good year, but I think Ryan is comfortably the best player on this team, and to be missing her for such a long stretch. Another Olympian going into Paris with some tough injury issues just really bums me out. They tried to address the point guard issue from last season because this was a team that was just always getting sped up and not being very disciplined when they had leads. And then, of course, Jordan Canada gets hurt immediately and has played just a couple games this season. Ariel Powers recently has been out. Haley Jones, not really a point guard, despite what Atlanta is trying to pigeonhole her into. So it just is really hard to address any of the the issues that they had last season in terms of, their offense. And then defensively, they just give up so many threes. I don't understand why the system hasn't changed yet. It's a really weird theory. We're just going to pack the paint as much as possible and let you shoot. And I guess against Connecticut, it could work. But against most teams in the W, it seems like an invitation to have a really good offensive night. So, A lot of weird things happening in Atlanta. They don't even own their draft pick for this upcoming season, which is a real problem if you're the Atlanta Dream. You really have to get into the playoffs. So, best of luck for Ryan Howard's health and Jordan Canada's health, because that's what you're going to need in the second part of the season.
So you're saying to start prepping for the next season already, get healthy.
I'm saying you really got to get into the 8th seed. You don't want to give up a lottery pick. That's just embarrassing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I suppose it could happen, but we got the WNBA All-Star Game coming up this weekend. It's on Saturday in Phoenix. We've got events prior to that this year because we've got the Olympics going. It's going to be Team USA versus the WNBA All-Stars led by Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese amongst many other players. What are you watching for on Saturday, Sabrina?
So many things. I'm excited for De'Arica Hamby to get to play against 4 members of the Las Vegas Aces, because De'Arica Hamby loves playing against Las Vegas. I'm excited for DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas, fiancés, to have to guard one another in that game, since they've been teammates for the last 4 years and the entirety of their relationship. I'm excited for Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese to share the court together, and potentially Clark to throw some, assists to Angel inside.
Yeah.
But, I kind of just want to see, Team USA healthy. I feel like that's been a theme that I've brought up a lot over the last half an hour or so.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of these Olympians have not been in a great place physically, and I just want to see what that team looks like altogether as 12 players, and I worry that it's not going to happen by Saturday. But, I'm a huge homer when it comes to international basketball, and I just want them to look as overwhelming and dominating as possible. And it'd be nice if that started out with a win against the WNBA All-Stars.
Yeah, everybody says we when it comes to international basketball, and nobody has a problem with it. That's we.
Going into Saturday, you mentioned the Olympians' injuries, and so many of them across the board, and wondering how they're going to go about it. Will they just kind of make sure that they're healthy through it, or are they going to take down Team WNBA the way they weren't able to do in 2021? The last time this happened, the Team WNBA won. Obviously, I can say we now, had no problem winning the Olympics at the end of the day. But how do you see that playing out in terms of Team WNBA versus the Olympic team?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot more motivation on the WNBA side than there is on the Team USA side, because as you mentioned, in 2021, not only did the Olympic team lose to Team WNBA, they then lost an exhibition in the next game to Australia before going on to, win the gold medal in Tokyo. So it's not like they really need this tune-up to prove that they're ready to go, for Paris next in a couple weeks. Whereas everybody on the WNBA, you have somebody like Arike Gumbawale, who has talked about the politics of Team USA and her not being able to be on the Olympic team, and Neko Kumake, who is famously snubbed multiple times for the Olympic team and probably has a little bit of an axe to grind with the Olympic Committee. And then you have players like, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, who would love to be on the Olympic team at some point, and this is sort of their audition, and also why didn't you select me this year type of thing. So I think the motivation is just so much higher on the WNBA side, and the fact that they can afford to play really hard, and if they get a little nicked up, it's fine because they're off for 4 weeks. Whereas if you get a little nicked up on Team USA, that could, be potentially problematic when you get to Paris. So I think just the stakes are so much clearer for Team WNBA, other than Diana Taurasi and Kalia Copper and Brittany Griner, who probably want to put on a good show for their home crowd in Phoenix. I just don't think the motivation is there for Team USA. So rather than try very hard and potentially get embarrassed or potentially get hurt, I think the key is just to take it easy, try to put on a little show for the fans and get started with your meaningful prep on Sunday.
Yeah, it's such a unique situation where you're named an all-star, but you're somehow still a snub. So the motivation for the WNBA All-Stars is just built in right there. Here's a dumb take. I think that the WNBA All-Stars will win every time they play versus Team USA, just because they care a little bit more. And like you're saying, Sabrina, they can go all out because they got 4 weeks afterwards. You mentioned some of the Phoenix players wanting to put on a show. One guy who is going to be putting on a show, Pitbull, announces the halftime act for the WNBA All-Star Game this weekend. In his tweet, Pitbull said, "I was raised by a woman, and a woman made me a man." You excited for Pitbull, Sabrina?
I was more excited before the tweet, but no, generally very excited for Pitbull.
Dale, should be fun. That is Saturday, but then the league is taking a big break. You said 4 weeks for the Olympics. The regular season will resume August 15th. What should we be watching for in the second half of this season?
A few things. I think if Vegas finally decides it's time to play like a real basketball team, they haven't played really good defense for the majority of this regular season. So I think if they recognize that these last 15 games are meaningful to them, you mentioned the top 5 teams, I think, are all realistic contenders. You don't want to be number 5 because then you don't get home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs, and you could potentially have to go to the number 4 seed and play 2 home games there and not even get to come back to your own arena. in that first round, which is a best of 3. So I think seeding is going to be really important for those top 5 teams. Can Vegas turn it on? Can Connecticut get a good win against Las Vegas or New York in those upcoming games? And then, obviously I always have my eye on the lottery because Paige Becker's coming out in the 2025 draft. You've got Dallas, who probably didn't want to be here at this point, but they've fallen pretty far back. And do they still try to pack it in with Satu Sabali, or do they try to win some games and maybe get an 8 seed and realize, is there that big of a difference between a lottery pick and the number 5 pick? Who knows? And then that race, for the final playoff spots with Indiana and Chicago and Atlanta, I think is going to be really good. So, yeah, I'd say the number one thing I have an eye on is, what do the Aces look like after the break? Just because on paper, that's another championship team, but, the way they've looked against Chicago last night or, in some of their recent games doesn't exactly scream three-peat. So, yeah, those are probably the top items on my list.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Aces. It feels old school NBA-ish, where teams are just all right, flip that switch. We can do it. We've seen it. We've done it before. Although I like, speaking of the NBA, the trade that you mentioned, the WNBA team and how motivated they are. I'm very much looking forward to that because, you're totally right. Going up against the Olympic team, that should be something that the NBA does at All-Star Weekend. We're trying to find some motivation for this East versus West. It does not happen. So some way, somehow, we used to see Pitbull. They're crossing over. Now we're seeing this crossover.
Yeah, you're getting Flo Rida next year. I can already tell.
Yay! I saw how excited you were for Pitbull, Sabrina. It's got to be big for you.
Nothing screams high-level basketball to me like Pitbull. I hear his voice when I think NBA playoffs.
Exactly.
So, I'm here for it.
What are you going to do this month? 4 weeks until the W comes back. Like you mentioned, the other stuff will be going on, obviously, with the Olympics. But how do you plan to spend these 4 weeks?
Well, I'm really excited to watch the Olympics, first and foremost. I mean, I love handball and canoeing and all these random things that come into my life once every 4 years that I will, put on the back burner again until Los Angeles in 2028. But no, I'm spending some time on the beach, kind of checking with some college friends. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, you want to talk about things that the NBA should steal. 4 weeks off in the middle of the season. That's incredible.
It's like the bubble all over again.
Yeah, exactly right. We'll just take a break here. Everybody get healthy, come back, and we'll have an awesome stretch run. Can't wait to see what happens. We'll keep reading your work, Sabrina. Can you tell people where they can find you and what you got coming out or anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, so at theathletic.com is all of our women's basketball stuff. During the WNBA season, I've got a weekly wrap-up power ranking thing that comes out every Monday, where I also talked about Angel Reese's stat padding this week. So it's a fun little way to get into every week of the season. And Ben and I have a debate that comes out every Thursday where we, pick one topic and just get at each other about why the other one's wrong. So that's always really fun. And we have the Athletic Women's Basketball Show that releases every Tuesday. So that's, I think, the best women's basketball podcast out there. So you should listen to it.
I think so, too. I love the debate you and Ben had about the Rookie of the Year. We linked it in the chat here, so people should go and check that one out. Sabrina, thank you so much. We'll have to talk to you soon once we get the W back in our lives and get a little bit closer to playoff times. Thank you so
Sabrina.
much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll have to bring my own WNBA jersey to wear next time. That was an error on my part.
There we go. Candace Parker, the GOAT. I'm sure you agree. We're going to take a look at Tweet of the Night real quick.
Tweet of the night. Wow.
Twitter. This was making the way around Twitter yesterday. It's Jaylen Brown and Kysre Gondrezick at the game at Summer League where the best lip reading happened with Jaylen Brown and Kysre, because Jaylen Brown, as it's being quoted everywhere, comments about Bronny not being a pro. And then they have this discussion. So it is Jaylen Brown saying, I don't think Bronny is going to be a pro. And Gondrezick says, I think he'll be on the G League team for sure. And Jaylen says, I don't think so. I think because of his name, he'll be on the Lakers. So he literally doesn't think he'll be a pro. Can't be a pro. And you could see Angel Reese, who is also there, listening to Jaylen Brown when he says, I don't think Bronny is a pro. She nods. She gives a little nod, although she says, I'm not taking part of this. But the next part with Jaylen Brown actually commenting on this tweet was really interesting. He said, on a retweet, X, whatever you call it. He said, it's a flex to have your son alongside you in the NBA. It reflects greatness and longevity. Bronny has all the tools around him to be successful. I look forward to watching his growth. So he did not take back his statement whatsoever. And I like that about him. He's basically saying, this is how I feel. And I can say that because people watching Bronny James definitely felt that way. I know we had this discussion in Vegas. I think it's good for him to go to the G League. That's where he belongs. He needs to get better. I think his defense is solid, but obviously his offensive skills can improve a lot. And so that's where he should play. As Kysre said, I think he's going to be in the G League. Although Jaylen says, nah, I don't know about that. I think his name just makes him a Laker for life. That being said, he can do both. He can play for a few games or be on the bench for the Lakers and basically not play and come out with dad at times. Like rare situations. I think that's what should happen. Anyways, I like how Jaylen's defending himself and not just saying, no, I didn't say that. I didn't feel like that. He's just saying, yeah, I said that.
Yeah, I said that, and it's hard to argue when you can literally see my lips moving and people are able to read the lips. I don't know. You're a pretty good lip reader, actually, and much better than me. I'm always impressed when people are able to figure out what they're saying, but I think you nailed it. They're both right, because I think that Bronny will probably start the season with the Lakers. There's already been talk about him playing alongside LeBron during the first week of the season, and then he goes down to the G League to work on his game and hopefully, for the Lakers, become a piece that can actually stick around and maybe even get into the rotation in the next couple of years, because the Lakers are still a team trying to win a championship, right? That means they don't want to rely on any second-round pick. They don't want to rely on any 55th pick, and clearly Bronny just isn't quite ready to be contributing to a team like the Lakers. So like Kysre Gondrezick said on Twitter, though I think she may have deleted it already, the G League is a great place to work on your game. You'll get more touches. You'll get more opportunity. You'll have to play defense because that's why coaches are going to put you on the floor. It's a chance for Bronny to prove that he actually deserves to be in the NBA. So, I mean, nobody wants to get sent to the G League, I don't think, but a lot of second-round draft picks do, and it's nothing that's a big deal. Just go down there, prove that you're good enough to play, then come up and be a part of the real team.
It is great to go down there and try and make yourselves better. That's exactly what Kysre Gondrezick was implying, for sure. But they don't have that luxury like NBA players do to be able to go down to a G League team. It is good for them. It was interesting just following along the Summer League in this conversation because it is automatically thought of as a 4-year contract and Bronny James is going to be there for 4 years. It's not all guaranteed. I was surprised to see that, actually, after a while, that it is only a couple of years guaranteed. And so who knows what happens beyond that it's basically matching. Nah, it isn't basically matching. It lines up
seniors.
With senior a little bit. Yeah, not completely. But yeah, it's a good thing for Rich Paul to have him sign this type of contract. This is a second round, number 55 pick to get money, number one, and to get this type of G League reps beside him. That's the important thing. But as you said, late second round picks don't usually help teams. They just do not. Second round picks don't usually help teams. Now they drafted an old Connect in the first round as their pick, and he looked good in summer league. He's just looked solid. Period. He just looks like he's going to be part of the rotation. So they went old there to help them out. But it is an interesting team because you see guys like Gary Trent. I'm sure you'll talk about it on Friday's drop, but guys that could have helped the Lakers in some way, shape, or form, getting signed somewhere else. So all in all, I bet it's some sad times, but really, I don't think Bronny James is going to be. He ain't starting. He ain't playing a ton of minutes on this team. So really, it's not all that bad. Anyways, when it all comes down to is Jaylen Brown just comfortable saying stuff like he said about not being on the Olympic team, and he said, well, Nike, what are you doing? I deserve to be on the Olympic team, and he backed that up as well, saying I think Nike has something to do with it. Anyways, winning Finals MVP lets you do whatever you want.
Yeah, he's living his life like he just signed a $300 million contract and won Finals MVP. But my guess is that we don't see a lot of uncovered lips from Jaylen Brown when he's sitting courtside anymore after the way this went down. I think if I'm the Lakers or a Lakers fan, the only thing I'm really feeling any type of way with Bronny is that he does take up a roster spot. Gary Trent Jr. just went for a veteran minimum. He would help a team like the Lakers a lot more than Bronny is going to help them.
He does take a roster spot. That is true.
Yeah.
It's not a two-way contract, which Rich Paul's agent said that ain't happening. We're not doing that. He got a contract, which is true. Yeah, I wonder if Gary Trent would have been comfortable going to the Lakers, or I mean, it took a long time here, mid-July, for Gary Trent to be signed. So I wonder, what the situation was with the Lakers there.
We shall see. I would go down to the Gateway Center Arena to see Bronny play him.
Good point.
Bronny versus Kobe. Buffkin.
Yeah.
Exciting times in the A. Tess, yesterday you talked to Joel about the MLB season.
Yeah.
About the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Who won it? The Golden Glizzies.
The Golden Glizzies were absolutely fun to hand out for the first half of MLB, because it was a legitimately fun first half, and it was great to see Shohei hit a dinger in the All-Star game. Totally fun. It was a good one. The discussion actually after the All-Star game was, who has the worst All-Star game? Because it just feels like every league.
Which leagues is the least interesting to watch, I guess.
Yeah, because league-wide, just sports-wide.
Yeah.
Whether it's NFL, the most popular sport in North America for sure, or whether it's the NBA, or whether it's MLB, or NHL. I love the skills contest, but it's same goes for NBA. I love the Saturday night, not the skills contest, but the dunk contest, and the 3-point contest. I like the surrounding events. The NFL, I mean, they play like dodgeball or something. They play some weird stuff, and those are the more fun things when it comes to these sports. But I still think MLB is running it just because you have to play similarly. Like, they don't play, I guess, as hard. Like, they're not stealing bases. But I don't know. I like the uniforms. There's also debate about that. People are saying, hey,
Oh, you like those ones?
yeah, I like them loud.
Kind of old-timey looking brownies.
I think you throw the hat on. It's a combo. It's a combo of the hat. Hat looks fairly new.
Yeah.
Jersey's fairly old. So it's like old guy, young guy. Old guy down low, young guy up top. That's what they should have called him. They would have sold. No, I'm not getting physical here. We're not talking about.
Get your old guy down lows, new guy up tops.
Just do it.
That's funny. What did you decide? NFL worst All-Star game? They don't even play their sport anymore.
Yeah.
They play whatever. They play flag football. Is that right?
Yeah, they play flag football.
Weird.
Exactly. They don't want to get injured, is what it comes down to. Yeah. The NFL says, hey, we're popular enough. We don't need to have an All-Star game, an actual All-Star game.
It's after the season?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Or I guess in between the end of the season?
Right. It's in between the Super Bowl and all the playoffs. Yeah, that's weird.
Making me feel good about the NBA, though. We have it during the season.
We sure do.
So exciting, man.
We sure do. Yeah, we can all improve. I mean, we brought it up here, talking about Sabreena about the Team WNBA versus the Olympians. Now, it doesn't work for every season. They don't do that in the WNBA every season. They do it every 4 years now when it lines up. I wonder if the NBA can capitalize on that somehow. It's tough. But even the discussion we've had before about North America versus the world, or U.S. versus the world. It's U.S. versus the world, because Canada would be on the opposing team, and it would be freaking awesome.
Yeah.
That seems to be the way we can make the NBA All-Star game good again.
Yeah, maybe that would work. Paul Skeens, that guy's pretty good.
He's awesome.
Flamethrower.
Yeah.
AL won the All-Star game. I saw. So great stuff for the Chicago White Sox.
They keep running it.
Kansas City Royals.
The AL's good. Yeah, the White Sox got a lot of good things going on.
You don't think they're going to the World Series and will have home field advantage?
You never know what could happen in the second half.
Yeah, turn it on.
Yeah, they're bad. They're very, very bad. But the AL is just running the show. They keep winning. Although, I think it is funny. The All-Star game in every sport, it's just ain't what it used to be. The Shohei thing from the National League, even though they didn't win, was the thing that stood out to me. Hitting a dinger. That's fun.
Hitting a ding-dong.
Yeah.
So, that's No Bunts yesterday.
Yes.
Talked with Sabreena today. Great stuff. Thank you so much to her for coming on. We will be back on Friday with The Drop to talk about some NBA stuff. Ain't a lot going on right now, Tess.
Right.
Matas Buzelis is dominating Summer League. Love to see that, but otherwise it's like we might be doing 45 minutes on Gary Trent Jr. going to the Bucks. Is he the new Malik Beasley, people are saying? Tune in Friday to find out.
He could
Clipper
be.
Bros.
You heard it here first. Have a great time. Turn up. Love you guys. Awesome.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, the thing that Asia Wilson and Angel Reese wear on their legs, it's called a leg sleeve. But I like your suggestion. A pant. Leg pant. Or what do you wear on your arm? I guess it's a sleeve. That's weird to me too. Because it's like a tight. It's like it goes back to Allen Iverson. Like, what is that thing? It's just a
piece of fabric on your arm.
Yeah,
so
there's no
Rip
good.
Hamilton doesn't scratch you.
Yeah, right.
That's why Ray Allen said he wore one at least.
Yeah.
Embrace the leg sleeves. Embrace the W.